Hello everyone, and welcome back to the campaign diary for my Rime of the Frostmaiden campaign Aracséa edition. In today's session, the party battle a deadly magic-eating foe, become official local heroes, and learn that the stakes may be going up. So for those keeping track of time, one day will advance by the end of this session, bringing us to the 17th of Caerldin. Now, this is a very interesting game, and I don't know how long this diary will be, nor how detailed, given that the first nearly 3 hours of the session was the boss fight against the beholder creature. So here is the deal. I was going to kind of do a brief bits and just denote interesting bits that happened, give you the details of how the fight was mechanized, if you like, and orchestrated. So the party were fighting a Gauth, which is a sort of magic-eating beholder creature. I think it's like CR8, CR6, something like that. There was a myriad of problems for them to overcome in this fight. So first off, the Gauth most of the time was hovering some 10 feet above the ground, so it was difficult for melee characters to really do anything to it. Secondly, it had a stunning gaze effect, so if a player doesn't divert their gaze when they try to look at it to attack it, they would be forced to make a wisdom save, and basically, if they failed that, they'll be stunned, which effectively just ends their turn right there and then. Thirdly, on each of its turn, it had 3 different eye beams, or 6 different, but 3 eye beams that would fire that a turn, and they did a lot of various devastating effects. And the most effective of them seemed to be sleep, because a lot of the characters fell to sleep a lot of the time. Fourthly, after the first round of combat, I introduced a lair action step, where the beast would begin to siphon magic from the dormant ship that it was aboard, and after about, I think it was 3 rounds of combat, it would superpower its beams, and I had like a separate list of beams that it would then go onto, and one of them was an instant death beam if it failed to save, kind of thing, but luckily it didn't come to that. Um, Fifthly, after another few rounds of combat, I set out another few things for it to happen. So, the dormant ship itself began to apparate these like obsidian-like rocks that would come out around the little arena, and they themselves begin to siphon magic. I kind of described to Mutiny how she would estimate this would be like if this was an edited ship, this was probably like a ship energy leak kind of avoidance kind of system that was still active. And yeah, so the Gauth then started to go towards these obsidian rocks to try and scout their magic, which of course is even more powerful. And of course, the Gauth was healing every turn because of this magic as well. There's a bunch of stuff. And not only that, but sixthly, I also gave the creature like a big boost in hit points. I think I gave it like an extra 50% or something. It still only ended up being like 120 hit points, I think. So it wasn't, it wasn't too big of a deal. It didn't have any special resistances. It was just a lot of mechanics basically that they had to try and deal with. And I wanted this combat and this boss fight to be like a cool, difficult, and interesting fight. Excuse me, and that they can engage with, they can figure out mechanics for, like a raid boss fight in like Final Fantasy 14 or something. And which is something I tend to do over more feature in the future. That was ultimately like the first 3 hours was just all of that, more or less, just them dealing with that. I think at the end, Raina got the killing blow after like taking multiple wounds, and she'd sustained. I think she had fallen like twice in the battle, and it had to be resuscitated by Mutiny. Forsburn took like hardly any damage. I don't think he was able to like duck and dive between the stones for cover, and just generally avoid everything that was going on. Mutiny, who normally is the damage powerhouse in the group, kept missing uh, due to not being able to look at it, basically. She also took quite a fair bit of damage herself. But of course, in the end, they overcome the challenge. One feature of the Gauth is that it explodes on death with the remnant magic within it, and that explosion, of course, knocked Raina out for the 3rd time, so they had to get her up again. That was quite funny. It's just like, oh, for crying out loud, and she kind of just, yeah. Carl messaged me after the fight, actually. Carl is Frostmaiden's player, to say that it was a good fight, but he wished it went on longer. To which I replied, so did I. I didn't anticipate that they'd get in quite a lucky few hits towards the end of the fight there. But man, by the time Reina did get those hits in, they had done a lot of damage. You know, it had been healing. They'd already done, you know, up to 50% extra of its health anyway. The fight had gone on for nearly 3 hours, and I felt like they had earned it by that point, so I just gave it to them. Um, and I'm definitely going to be, yeah, doing longer fights in future. I do like making these mechanical kind of boss fights, and I know Carl enjoys them. So yeah, having them go on longer, I think will be interesting. Either that, or having them expend more of their resources earlier on in the dungeons and things. We will see. Maybe I should try and record like properly those bigger fights, do a like screen capture or something. But I don't know. I guess 3 hours a good YouTube video does not make kind of thing. So yeah, we'll see. I'm sure I'll get a chance to do a fireside chat as well with someone in the possibility of the future. So anyway, moving on from that, they discuss kind of like what all of this basically is, what is an alien ship kind of thing, because Mutiny has to do a lot of the front loading here, as being the only one that's kind of seen outside of Frostgales. Really, the other two just have no notion of what an alien even would be. To the point where the Rainer and Dagner even say like, "Oh, Mutiny, this is a good story you're making up," kind of thing. At any rate, they each pass around this side crystal, and there is a recorded message. Namely, they hear a string of numbers and the words "Iridescendant." I did make an audio file, and I will put it in here now for you to hear.
5, 3, 4, 7, 7, 1. Iridescendant. Emergency. Iridescendant. Emergency.
And so, yeah, after that, they gradually, with some kind of different arcana rolls and various of their own headwork, figure out that this side crystal is receiving a message, not transmitting it, which leaves them all puzzled. Apart from Carl, who later then tells me his theory, which is obviously correct. It's the crash, the comet that they saw crash earlier. But Forsburn wasn't around to see that, so Forsburn can't exactly explain that. But there we go. From there, they return to Tourmaline, but not before I forget this, a great ordeal to tackle the broken bridge that they had left, which actually took a lot longer for them to solve than I had anticipated. It was solved namely by a few clutch decisions on what to do, how they were going to get Azazel across, and a few different skill rolls they had to make. Eventually, after some time, everyone eventually found their way to safety. Also worth noting, everyone leveled to level 5 at this point, which is a massive boost in power for them. Level 5 is one of those power levels in D&D, along with 11 and 17, I believe. And so you got things like double attack, more sneak attack damage, 3rd level spells for Stronus wherever he is, and which also means an opportunity for me to use more interesting and harder fights, basically, for in futures. The enemies, as the players will level up, so will the enemies. But I digress. Anyway, they return to Speaker Oris's abode. It's somewhat late at night when they do arrive, and he offers them tea and some food. Raina asks for a bath because she's kind of just covered in guts. He does say he will run one, but for some reason they decide not to take him up on that for some reason. I think they just say, we're just going to go walk in the lake or something like that, which is fine. The speaker then continues to ask them about the conditions in the mine. Can it be reopened? Do they have any recommendations to shut things down? And that kind of business talk, aftermath stuff, which is not important for you guys to really to know. Just roleplay things, and then they move on to the matter of their rewards, where the speaker offers to name them Skulder of Tourmaline, which is kind of like a sort of Thane kind of title, local heroes that have obtained the speaker's recognition. Forsberg kind of chuckles about the idea of a Khotun being named, of a like human settlement, to which Horus kind of just says it's not that outlandish. We have a Khotun who's a speaker at Caer Conic, and like this takes Forsburn back, and it's like, Carl, it says to me, would Forsburn have known this? Would he have met thing, but which of course he wouldn't have, because he got knocked out on the long shelf and was brought there by Raz, so you wouldn't have any idea. But maybe gives them a little push to Caer Konig. Some information that Stronus has obtained from Heresy, I can't remember if I talked about this in a different episode, is something else to do with Caer Konig, that there is a bunker there where there seems to be a gathering of Jorgen people, or something to do with Voken Firebrand, Runebrand, wherever I called him, in Caer Konig. So it's more information to push him that way. Carl in particular, to push him that way. And yeah, Horus Canisius explains that there hadn't been Skolder of anything for at least like 20 years since the War of the Long Shelf. And he kind of does that thing where he looks lovingly at all the memorabilia he's got, you know, he's giving that massive hint. And it's eventually revealed and explained that his father was once a Skolder of 10 towns, who this group back then, which were just heroes of the entirety of Frostgales, more or less. And they all wore this ceremonial raven pin thing, which actually clutched a feathered robe, and with a feathered kind of cloak kind of thing. And Horus even had like a very dusty and dishevelled version of it there. He didn't have anything to offer them in terms of this to this effect, but he did say, you know, we'll take your names down, we'll be read out in the morning, and you'll be recognised as Skolder of Tourmaline. This, by the way, all of this lore about the Skolder of 10 Towns from 20 years ago, blah, 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 is all kind of foreshadowing the future event where I'm sure you can probably guess it, and probably they have as well, where they're obviously going to be named Skolder of 10 Towns by the Speaker's Council or something. And we will see all of this come to happen at the pinch point when we jump into Act 2, the trailer of which I still have made. I know it's not gone anywhere in the last few sessions where I've talked about it, but I still cannot show anyone until it's understood that I know people are going to know what the trailer is talking about when we get to it, which is, I can't wait for you guys to see it. I can't wait for the players to see it, because I've put quite a bit of work into it, and I think it's going to be great. At any rate, I'll stop blathering about that. The group decide to retire for the night. They realise they don't know where an inn is in town. They think that the Blue Clam is an inn, but it's not, it's a restaurant. The speaker tells them to go to the Eastside Inn. Upon arrival, it is apparent that the Eastside Inn is little more than kind of like a half a house, as most of the wooden buildings in this area are kind of like built at weird angles, like some sort of abode from Professor Layton or something like that, and a weird mishmash of buildings in this area. They enter the Eastside Inn. They see like a small desk on the left, and they see nothing else in the room apart from a hatch that seems to go down to some gentle candlelight that is lighting up the area beneath them through the floorboards. And they also hear someone humming like an eerie tune. And it's here that I introduce them to Marta. Somewhat different from how she is in the books, and we'll explain in a second. Marta takes them through a multitude of underground passages that Forsberg deduces must run under most of the town, and maybe perhaps further abroad, and maybe kind of figures out that it might have been used as smuggling routes at some point as well. But eventually Marta takes them to their respective rooms where they will spend the night. Forsberg has a little nocturnal activities, as he is keeps hearing the humming from down the hall, and just goes for a snoop around a little bit. Eventually like chats with Marta, who seems to be attending someone at a bedside. This is her father, who she explains has fallen ill. Forsberg looked for any like similarities between Marta's papa and like the other diseases he had encountered with the speakers, seeing if there was any sort of correlation, since there seems to be a lot of this going round at the moment, which is fair play. But there wasn't much correlation that he could find. In fact, it was when he was talking to Marta, it's a bit hard to get information from her. She seemed Forsberg picked up rather quickly that she was a bit scatterbrained. A lot of her information was contradictory and didn't seem to really make too much sense. The main points were to pick up that her father was given a ring around her that she had been stroking while singing to him, around her around his finger. It's kind of like these two entwined Arctic foxes. And it was given a ring as a gift for helping a young lady some time ago. And after she had left, he began to fall ill. She doesn't know something else that Forsman got from her was that she doesn't actually recognise the song that she sings, but just feels like it's right to sing it. And it's all very bizarre. It's all kind of shrugged off. This does have a tie-in to some of the other story in this area, namely to Ravacin and the Thrakari stuff, but it's not going to be. I've decided a lot with the Rime stuff that not every single. I'm not going to push every single story in front of their face. They're going to have to pick them up if they want to see things resolved, that kind of thing. So this is just one of those things that is here. And while Forsman kind of just brushes this bit off, it does have a little bit of a look around the room. There are a few items he sees near a mirror dresser, like iconography and such that Forsman has never seen before. Not that he would, because he's coaching, but still very different from the other Frostgirl folk. In fact, she even has like a slightly, we would describe it like a Slavic kind of accent. And Marta Forsman would also notice that she composes herself very differently, very more almost regal-like. And these are all little things that were dropped in there. Carl had no idea, obviously. A player later on put the pieces together to who slash where Marta is from, I should say, really. And it's all, like I said from the last campaign diary, it's all just hinting at other nods of a wider world. So Marta, just for you guys, for clarity, Marta is from another human nation, quite far away, in fact, from the Corrin Reaches. And just as like a brief, Corrin is sort of a place where, like, if you mix like Witcher 3 with like Diablos, like Tristram kind of thing, mix in Bloodborne, mix in Waterhammer Fantasy, you know, all the grim aspects of that kind of stuff, that is that part of the world, pretty much. That is a very crude and brief and not fair summary of the Corrin Reaches, but that is there. I'll try and bring up the world map. I do actually have one for Aracséa. Don't know why I've not shown it to you guys yet, but I'll bring it up and you can have a look around and see like things in variation with each other. And yeah, so Corrin is where she's from, and like I said, none of this is really important. It's just there for look at the world, kind of, you know, that kind of showboating thing. And so yeah, after that, Forsburn pretty much simply returns to bed, and that is the end of the session, pretty much. I do mention while we're wrapping up that the first thing they will hear on their brooches of sending when they awake is Hruna, who is kind of over the line saying to them that she wants to meet them in East Haven as something has happened regarding some oath glass. Remember, she wanted them to keep an eye out for the oath glass that had gone missing, and she said, and is now saying that something has happened. A sign perhaps that the enemy